we estimate that with all of the questions, we'll end up with about 6 to 7 great questions from our panelists. To keep us on time, Leanne Cox is down in front. She will be timing the responses. She will hold up a white card when you have 15 seconds remaining in your 1-minute response period, and the time will be up when you hear the sound of the bell. Very good. And then I reserve the right to jump in if anyone goes over the bell. But everything went very smoothly last Monday, and everyone stayed right on time. We also have reader questions that have been submitted to the Hutch News, so those have been woven into the questions that the panelists are asking this evening. So I would like to go ahead and introduce the candidates that have joined us on stage this afternoon. On the left, we have Mr. Ron Sellers. Ron is the vice chairman of the sign manufacturer Luminous Neon. He served 8 years on the Hutchinson City Council, including 2 stints as the mayor. He also served on the Hutchinson Community College Board of Trustees and currently sits on the Hutchinson Recreation Commission. And on the right, we have Kris Knowles. Kris and his wife Teresa own a local franchise for Snap-on tools, as well as several rental properties throughout Hutchinson and Reno County. And this is Kris's first bid for public office. So we thank all of you for coming out, and we thank these candidates for their participation. So we will begin tonight with the opening statements from Ron Sellers.
Thank you, Deborah. I'd like to thank the Chamber and the Hutchinson Regional Healthcare System for sponsoring this forum. In city and county elections, it's very hard to help voters learn about candidates' views about public policy. This event should help voters in their voting decision. I'd also like to thank tonight those people that have helped me in the election so far. I've had many people volunteer with various segments of the election process. I am a lifelong resident of Hutchinson and Reno County, a 1966 graduate of Hutchinson High School. Very proud to be a 1968 graduate of Hutchinson Community College, 70 graduate of KU in Business Administration. Was in the National Guard for 6 years from 1970 until 1976. I've been employed by Luminous Neon Signs for 48 years, something that I still enjoy. One thing about selling signs, you get to know many other businesses. You get to know a lot of businesses because you're in their facility when you're doing your signage. Something that I've enjoyed throughout my career, getting to know other businesses. I am married to Ann Sellers for 45 years. We have 3 adult children, Abby, Adam, and John, 4 grandchildren, Hank, Libby, Jackson, and Grant. Ann, Abby, John, Hank, and Libby, and Jackson are here today. Thank you. They're back in the back, and then hands up here in the front. I thank them for coming. I've been involved in volunteer boards and elected positions for many years. Chamber Board, Boys and Girls Club, Rotary, presently with HRC. I've been on the City Council. I've been on the HCC Board. I've made many presentations at planning meetings because of my work in the sign business. I feel with these, thank you.
All right, Mr. Knowles.
He can have some of my time. Because I don't have nearly accomplishments that he does. My name is Kris Knowles. I am a Snap-on dealer here in Hutchinson, Reno County. My wife Teresa of 36 years, got 3 adult children, 5 grandchildren. And we do have some rental property we take care of. Do some gardening. I was my senior class president, was the only office I ever held. So that's about it for me. I look forward to working with the county commission if elected.
Well, thank you both very much for your remarks. So now we are going to begin the battery of questions. And for the first question, Ron Sellers will answer first, followed by Mr. Knowles. And this question comes from Ron Sellers related to the topic, or Ron Sylvester related to the topic of economic development.
And the question is, how satisfied are you with the economic development in Reno County? And explain your answer.
Presently, I think I'm somewhat satisfied with the work we're doing on economic development. and stepped up to another level, so I congratulate her on her efforts to date. The city seems to be more aggressive on helping people come to the community. The county somewhat less. I think the city and county could work closer together on economic development. But in general, I would say that we're doing a good job. I'm hoping that what Deborah said in the paper recently will occur, that we have several interested groups coming to the community. And I'm 15 seconds short.
All right, Mr. Knowles, what is your response to that question?
Well, I guess I look at my customer count, people that I see, businesses losing employees. I think it's kind of stagnant. I don't see a lot of growth. I don't know what the answer is. I hope with some study and to try and figure out how to get some more business out.
Ron, do you have a rebuttal? Or
Well, I
another
would agree
remark to
with
make?
my opponent that we need to be as aggressive as possible. Certainly, we don't have as many jobs, and the population of the county has been stagnant. I don't know that that's all due to the efforts of government, but I think that we can't work hard enough towards this to try to attract more people to the community, and if elected, I'll be part of that team. Work very hard on it.
Very good. Well, economic development is certainly first and foremost on the priorities for the Chamber of Commerce, and we appreciate the county's role in that. I want to just ask that everyone speak up a little bit. We've had some comments from the crowd that they couldn't hear as well, so lean in as close to the mic as you possibly can without touching it. So the next question will come from Cliff Shank, related to some issues around the courthouse.
My wife and I both recently visited the courthouse, and to be honest, I was really shocked at how horrible it looks in there. I know we've moved over to the annex and most of the offices, but it's embarrassing to walk into our courthouse and just see it in its current state of disarray. And I think maybe not a lot of people go to the courthouse, but some of us do, and it's embarrassing to walk into the courthouse and just see it in its current condition.
So Mr. Knowles, you get this question
Oh,
first.
And I agree 100% with you, and I've been in the courthouse going to the commission meetings, and they tell me that they're doing a repiping of the heating and air, and that's why everything's kind of tore up and stuff scattered around and put in different places, and yeah, it does look terrible. I hope they decide with something to do with the main part of the courthouse. Maybe a daycare, something for the employees.
Mr. Sellers, do you have a response to that question?
Well, I would agree. The main floor of the courthouse does need activity. My understanding is one of the departments of the that's up on upper floor was to move down there, and that didn't happen. I do know that the present commission is working on getting something into there so that there is activity on the first floor. It's disturbing to me that the only activity on the first floor is security, and we seem to have quite a bit of that.
Mr. Knowles, you get a 30-second reply to that.
Yeah, other than the Dan's office, I think, is in there, and the chamber meetings, meeting room and their offices, there's not much going on. I have to agree. It's sad.
All right. For the third question, Mr. Fred Goff has a topic around the county's nuisance policy. Fred?
Well, the commission now is considering a nuisance policy which came about as a result of some residents complaining about a rundown property in the county. Do you favor such a policy or ordinance to handle this issue? And if so, how do you see it being implemented?
Mr. Sellers, this is your time for your response.
Okay, it's a very good question. I'm not sure that I can say yes or no whether I favor this without listening to more of the discussion. I do know that this ties into unzoned part of the counties where we do not have zoning ordinances that require people to do certain things to live in certain areas. I also know, attending some of the wind energy meetings that went on last fall, that a lot of people move out to the unzoned areas of the county so that they don't have the regulations. It's unfortunate when you don't have regulations, you also can't control what happens to your neighbor. If people do not want zoning, they're going to have some of these issues such as they're talking about on this nuisance that's going to be talked about at the council meeting in a couple of weeks.
I think that if they do a nuisance ordinance, it's probably going to stir up a can of worms that they wish they probably wouldn't have started, because then everybody's going to complain, and the law enforcement's not going to have enough time to police all of the abandoned cars and stuff like that. I would rather see them go to this landowner that everybody talks about and see why he won't clean it up. Maybe he can't afford to, maybe he doesn't live close enough in the area to. Just do it one-on-one. Because we don't need any more zoning.
Mr. Sellers, do you have a response?
No.
All right. The next question is from Mr. Ron Sylvester, related to tourism.
Yes, should Reno County be more of an advocate for tourism? And if not, why not? And if so, what would the county do?
And Mr. Knowles, this was your question first.
I suppose, we don't have a whole lot to offer. The Salt Museum, the Cosmosphere are wonderful. I think you need more of a draw to get people to come to town other than those. People talk about the statues and the monuments downtown, the artwork, thinking that that's going to bring people to town. I don't know, maybe a study and some research to see if that's helping.
Is that your complete response?
That's my complete response.
All right, Mr. Sellers?
Yes, I think all facets of the community should be involved in tourism and trying to sell more tourism. We do have two big things with the Salt Museum and the Cosmosphere. For a period of time, the city of Hutchinson was not aggressively pushing activity at Fun Valley. That's been altered in the last 2 years with the activity that the Dutch Rec Commission has been doing out there. Their number of games has increased substantially. I don't think that we can do too much to try to attract tourism. I don't think it's just a convention business bureau, visitors bureau responsibility, but it's all the government entities in the community.
Mr. Knowles, do you have anything to add?
Should the county add a bunch of money to whatever to promote, to get people to come? I don't know, I think somebody would have to do some research and study and see.
I would just add that currently the budget that Reno County has allocated for marketing through the entity called Market Hutch that's operated at the Hutch Chamber is $13,500 per year. So just for the audience knowledge on that topic. Thank you both for your remarks. The next question we have comes from Cliff Shank, and it's related to salaries and benefits of the commissioners. Cliff.
Well, now that we have a full-time county manager, would you be in favor of cutting salaries for the county commissioners to help pay for other things like law enforcement and economic development?
Mr. Sellers?
I think it's probably right where it's at, because if you go to zero, there's always going to be said that that cuts out somebody that can't afford to take off of their job or something like that come to the meeting. So they've reduced it substantially. I think at one time it was over $40,000. And I should know, but it's either 16 or 18,000 now, I believe. So I think if it was reduced any more, it might discriminate against people that would be working by the hour that have to take off to attend meetings.
Mr. Knowles?
I didn't even know that it paid, so that wasn't why I was getting into this, I guess. But I guess, whatever, if the pay is sufficient, I guess leave it better.
Mr. Sellers, any final remark?
My only remark in response is I've always felt like public service is something that people can do if they have the time to do it. And it's something that is a mission of mine. I've always been willing to serve the public, and if elected, I would be willing to serve again. You put in a lot of time, but it helps the public.
We appreciate both of you being willing to give of your service. All right, the sixth question tonight comes to us from Fred Goff, and it is related to funding for bridges in Reno County. Fred?
Well, roads and bridges are always an issue, and the recent adding of a $1 million to cover some of the costs to rebuild or replace bridges in the county, do you think that was a good idea?
Mr. Knowles?
I think with some study and research, we could try to probably make an informed decision.
I don't think we'll ever have enough money to adequately take care of all the bridges that the county needs to maintain. So the department that takes care of that needs to do as good as they can do with the budgets that they're allowed. We just have too many miles of highway and roads within Reno County to take care of, so we'll have to do the best job that we can.
Mr. Knowles, do you have any final remark on that?
And I suppose that's prioritizing traffic on certain roads that need bridges replaced.
Very good. It's an important topic, one of the largest budget expenditures. So the question number 7 comes to us from Ron Sylvester, and this one is related to public safety and the tax lid.
Yes, this actually came from one of our readers. The Reno County Deputy Sheriff's Fraternal Order of Police asks, the tax lid legislation includes an exemption for public safety. Would you be open to using that?
And Mr. Ron Sellers, you're first on this question.
I don't believe in the tax lid. I think the voters of Reno County are smart enough to elect people that will represent them well, use tax money well. So I think it was a mistake for the state of Kansas to implement the tax lid. I believe that what the county is currently budgeting in their budget hearings for the sheriff's department is adequate. Mr.
Knowles?
Didn't you say that there was legislation that put the cap on the taxes? Isn't that something that the people voted on? No?
The state of Kansas put the tax lid.
So it wasn't voted on?
No.
I know people are tired of paying high taxes and they don't want to raise the taxes any more than they have to. And I think the sheriff said he gave back $130,000 on his budget last year, so he's staying within his budget. I think leave it alone.
Mr. Sellers, do you have a final response on that?
Well, just to clarify for maybe some of the people in the audience, the tax lid that he's referring to was, I believe, implemented 2 years ago by the state legislature. And that's what I was referring to, is that I felt like that's not the state's business. It's Reno County citizens' business, what they spend on safety and so forth.
All All right, well, this rounds out the 7 questions that our panelists have, which leaves us time for 2-minute closing remarks from each of you. And since Mr. Sellers went first on his opening statement, Mr. Knowles, you get to make your final 2-minute of closing remarks first.
Well, if elected, I would just hope that the other 2 commissioners would be willing to maybe change some of the ways that they've been thinking. I'm really big into Tony Seba's energy and transportation changing. I think it's here and it's coming. Solar power is something that's very underutilized. I think the county could benefit from that. Again, more study and would probably like to prove that they could save some money.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sellers, your closing remarks?
Okay, again, I'd like to thank the sponsors of this event, thank the audience for coming and listening to our discussion. One of the things that I've noticed since attending county commission meetings that I realized, but I didn't know, that there's only 3 county commissioners. I've been on boards at HCC that were 7 members. The city council is 5 members. It shows me how important each member on the county commission is, and I feel like that we hopefully need to elect the best and well-rounded people for those jobs. With Dan Deming leaving due to his belief in term limits, one of these positions is open. I feel I'm the best qualified to represent the citizens of District 1 and the entire county. I was on the HCC board. I was on the city council. If anybody has any doubt about how diligent I am in meetings, I'd ask that you ask Dr. Berger about the questions I ask. I'd ask you to ask John Deerdorf, and I would think that both of them would say I would be in the top 4 or 5 of their trustees as far as asking pertinent things in the taxpayer's interest. If you feel I'm the most qualified for the upcoming position, I would appreciate your vote on August 7th. And remember that early voting starts this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you both very much, Mr. Knowles and Mr. Sellers. We appreciate all of your perspectives, and again, thank you for your willingness to serve Reno County. I would like to thank our panelists again for all of the great questions. And again, I would also like to thank Hutchinson Regional Healthcare System for being a sponsor of this evening's event. We are going to take a 15-minute intermission. We will be reconvening promptly at 4:45 for the 104th District debate. So we would love for you to have the opportunity to visit with the candidates. So I'll ask all of you to give our candidates a great big round of applause.